Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. So greatly appreciate it. Truly, truly is. So we are going back down the Reddit rabbit hole today with another story time, a friend's story time. I have not read this yet. I am blind reacting to this for the very first time, and it is friends warning, very long post, also trigger warning. Okay, let me just preface this by saying that it's become very difficult for me to work, be a single mother, and research all of these stories. So wanted to see how this goes. Maybe I could throw these up in between so I'm not like disappearing from you guys for so long at a time. But let me know what you think of these in the comments. Let me know if you think there's story times that I should be doing, if there's story times that story time topics you want me to look for. I can do that too. It's just becoming very, very difficult to re to give the true crime stories the research and the respect that they deserve, and edit them and get them up in a decent amount of time. Not that I'm going to stop telling these people's stories. I'm not going to stop telling victim stories because I would never do that. But that's in case you were wondering. All right, whatever. I'm going to stop babbling. Let's just start. I'm not quite sure if this fits here because it was a bit of a strange situation, but here goes. I used to get bullied, and so did pretty much all of my friends. I've witnessed some of it, and I couldn't believe how cruel and degrading people could be. It wasn't a shock when Sally, my best friend, brought up a boy she had made friends with in a conversation. We were on holiday at the time, and I had already knew this kid. He was quiet, pretty smart, awkward, and clearly sad. She explained how he got bullied for his voice and how his ex-girlfriend was spreading rumors that he was faking a condition and that he didn't really sound like that. She wanted to know if she could let him sit with us at lunch because he usually didn't have anyone to sit with. I obviously agreed to it, not really knowing that much about him. I had talked to him a couple times and he seemed pretty happy about having someone to talk to, but I couldn't see any personality when I talked to him. Everything he did just seemed odd, like it wasn't really him. I know that sounds weird, but that's how I felt. His name was Samuel. His name was Samuel and Samael. Samuel? An unusual name, but quite nice. He seemed like a kind person, but he still had that weird feeling about him. And after a while of talking to him, Sally and I got to know him better. He liked dark jokes, much like me. He was really into Doctor Who. None of us really knew much about it, but we still let him talk about his interests so that he would feel more comfortable around us. He talked a lot. I didn't even realize he had feelings for Sally until he asked me if she likes Harry Potter or what her favorite colors are. She soon realized this too, but she had just gotten over a boy, so she made it clear that she wasn't interested. He wouldn't leave her alone, always next to her, somewhere nearby. It started to get to her, and she hated it. She felt as though she couldn't be alone, so I tried to do something about it. I wanted to help, so I turned his attention from her to me. I started hanging out with him more often, listening to his terrible, unfunny jokes, to his strange interests, to everything he said. I tried to make it seem like I wanted to be there, even though at this point I really didn't. I wanted to get away from him. He was beginning to tire me out emotionally with him constantly being there, somewhere near me. He wouldn't leave me alone. He even walked home with me and my friend Grace, despite the fact that he walks in the opposite way to his house. At one point, I was going through a particularly hard time and being desperate for help and someone to talk to. I turned to him. I knew it was the wrong move, but desperation led me to make that move. He asked me to video call, so I agreed. I was crying. He tried to calm me down. Eventually, he did and just started making his horrible jokes and talking about things I like and stuff he actually shouldn't have known about. But I didn't know at the time because I wanted someone to make me laugh. Laughter got me through a lot of hard times. I began to think he wasn't so bad after all, and that we just didn't like him for what he did to Sally. But maybe he wasn't like that. I started talking to him through video almost every day after school, and I noticed him being around even more often. One day, he said he needed to tell me something, which turned out to be his confession. He confessed that he had a crush on me, but I had to go because my mom wanted to watch a movie. When I returned, I had about 10 video and voice messages from him. All of them were him apologizing because he apparently thought I hadn't actually left to go watch a movie, but was instead avoiding him because of what he told me. I felt horrible. I didn't mean to upset him. He was crying. I explained that I really went to watch a movie, and that's why I was gone. Fortunately, he understood. After a while of hanging out with him, I began to get tired of him again, with him constantly being there, and now also knowing that he was crushing on me. I looked back to the situation with Sally and began to spot the same things in our friendship. He got clingy and just downright annoying. I politely explained to him that I didn't want to sit with him at lunch anymore, but he still insisted that I sat with him. I declined and just told him to go away every time he approached our table. One particular incident made me lose all respect for him, though. He would sometimes randomly walk with me and Grace, as I mentioned before, but this time it was different. Outside was a thick mist, but even I could see in it, and according to my friends who have looked through my glasses, I am technically blind. Samuel didn't wear glasses or contacts because there was nothing wrong with his eyes. Well, we walked all the way to Grace's house and we said our goodbyes. I often stayed at her house after school and we would watch weird videos we found in her recommended. About an hour into me being there, we heard a knock at the door. She goes to answer it thinking it's her parents. Needless to say, it wasn't her parents. It was Samuel. I heard his voice and dropped to the floor, hoping he didn't see me. After a long while of silence, I proceeded to army crawl over to the door to see if he was still there, and lo and behold, he was. Hello? His voice echoed in my mind at this point. I began to crawl back. I'm lost. I can't find my house. Can you guys help me? I asked. Liar. How could he possibly not know where his house is? And it's not like I knew where it was. I'd never been there. He persisted and continued to knock on Grace's door. She was hiding in the living room. We came to the decision that we would hide in the conservatory until he goes away, and so we did. Some time passed before Grace chose to climb onto a desk to see if he was still there. I jumped back when she yelped and stumbled off the desk, almost knocking me over. She turned to look at me and pointed in the direction she was looking. He's still there. He was looking directly at me. He fucking waved at me, she whispered. No way, I whispered back. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't happening. We were trapped by him. He wasn't outside. This was all just a joke or something. But Grace's face looked so scared, in a way, angry as well. I awkwardly got my stuff and told her I was going to head out to get him the hell away from her house. She reluctantly agreed, and I left with him. I offered to walk him down to the shop and let him go from there, but he refused to let me leave. He told me he couldn't see very well and that he almost got hit by a car earlier. Bullshit. This boy has boasted many times about how good his eyesight was. There's no way he suddenly couldn't see. Despite his apparent sight problem, he flawlessly led me to his house. At this point, I was in the area completely unknown to me, and I began to worry. How would I get home? It was already dark, and there was no way I was going to wander an area I had never been in, especially in the dark. Who knows what kind of creeps could have been hiding out there? I brought this up to him, and he assured me that his mom would drop me off. I didn't want that. I didn't want him to know where I lived. With how he was acting, I was fully convinced he would try to pull something. I suffer from symptoms of schizophrenia, and this didn't at all make it better for me. I felt unbelievably unsafe at the moment and wish I hadn't left Grace's and explained it to my mom later. I wasn't sure she'd understand. Countless minutes dragged on as I sat and waited in his room, surrounded by his cats. They were the only things keeping me from snapping and just trying to make my way back home on my own. Soon enough, his mom arrived and agreed to drop me off. Seeing how distressed I looked, she offered me some chocolates and assured me that I would be fine. She must have thought that she was the problem. It wasn't her. He was in the car. He would know where I lived now. I wanted to cry. This brought back so many horrible memories with stalkers I had in the past. He was so much like all of them. His eyes gave me that horrible feeling of hopelessness, and I hated it. After they dropped me off at my house, I went to my mom and broke out in tears. I couldn't take it anymore. He went too far this time. My mom said that she was going to report him for that because he wasn't going to cause me this much stress and get away with it. I agreed with her at the time, but soon after, I asked my mom to just forget it. Maybe this would all go away. It didn't. The next day, I told him I wasn't allowed to talk to him anymore because my mom told me not to. But he still refused to leave me alone. I obviously got mad due to having enough of his shit and had a complete mental breakdown, saying that I was going to get Tim, my boyfriend, on him because I was done. Grace and Felicity, my other friend, tried to take me to one of our most trusted teachers, but a few other teachers, despite seeing me crying hysterically, refused to let us through because she probably won't be able to help. So we found another teacher and explained the whole situation to her. She assured me that she would speak with him and attempt to get this sorted. Throughout the entirety of my geography class, I was having major anxiety, but I calmed down a bit in math. When lunch came, I saw Grace standing next to the door holding Samuel's stuff. What the hell is this about? I questioned. I don't know. He just dumped it on me and left. Now he's in the toilet. Then one of my male friends who knew about the situation, Chad, approached us and offered to take his stuff while we leave. I thanked him a million times and we hurried away. We reached the hall and sat down at the table where Sally and Felicity were, and everything seemed fine until he showed up again. He seemed pretty angry, so I assumed the teacher we spoke to had talked to him. I began to panic, thinking that this wouldn't end well, that we were all in danger. Then Rafita, another close friend, walked over to him, attempting to save me from an episode. She told him that I don't feel all right and that she should probably go. But he completely ignored her and asked me if I wanted food. I nervously shook my head and he started saying that he was going to pass out and that he needed to sit down. Rafita calmly told him that he can go sit down somewhere else because this isn't the best time. He turned to her, fury in his eyes, and yelled, "Now!" I hid my face in my hands. I felt weak, like I was going to start hyperventilating. He sat down and Rafita, having had enough of his shit, grabbed my arm and said, "Come on, let's go," while dragging me away, the others following. He also left the hall, but luckily he didn't follow us. Then all of the built-up stress and anger caused me to start hyperventilating and crying because I felt like I put not only myself but others in danger. I didn't know what to do anymore. Then Chad came and said that he'll talk to him for me and ask him to sit with him instead of us. Once again, I thanked him with all my heart and we went back into the hall. One of my old friends, Shayla, he is now transgender and his name is Jaden, came up to us and we told her the entire situation. She told us that this wasn't the first time something like this had happened and that he had a book in which he wrote about plans for mass homicide and that he calls it Samuelism. I did not see that coming. I did not see that coming. Then Chad returned and told me that Samuel wants to talk to me after science and how I probably should. So after science, I waited for him and he said he hadn't realized he was causing a problem. Shut up, of course you did. How can you be so damn oblivious to your own actions? I wonder that about some people myself sometimes. Then proceeded to tell me how bad his day was. I ended up having to walk him to the office. I told Tim about it, and he said he would meet me after school on Wednesday and sort it out if it doesn't stop. I was very thankful for this. I just wanted Samuel out of my life. He still wouldn't leave me alone after all that. He even specifically moved next to me in English class after everything that happened. On Friday, he still persisted with his little game. That day was parents' evening at school, so I went with my mom and left my phone at home. When I got back home and looked at my phone, my heart dropped. 20 messages. Fucking 20 of them within half an hour, all from Samuel. I started ranting about all of this to myself and even went in the bathroom to practice what I was going to say to him the next day. I started crying again because all of this was too much to bear. Then I decided to do something. I decided to call him out on all his stuff and inform him that a troubled childhood isn't an excuse to put someone in this situation. He actually tried to guilt trip me into forgiving him by telling me about his awful childhood. And I admit that I felt bad for him because no one should have to go through that kind of pain. But to show him that he isn't the only one who has dealt with things in the past, I told him about myself. Halfway through me explaining that I had a lot of trouble showing and experiencing emotions as a child, and that I had a lot of violent homicidal thoughts, he interrupted me, saying that he also didn't have emotions and that he tried to unalive someone because he thought it was funny. This actually pissed me off because not only was he interrupting me to add to his story and try to make me feel even worse, he was trying to one-up me on my suffering. If you ask me, that is absolutely disgusting. You don't compare struggles because you only have your own experiences to go off of. Don't try to make another person feel as though their problems don't matter and that they shouldn't ask for help with their problems because they're too small. That's just wrong. I don't know that that's what he was doing, sweetheart. I calmly told him that I let him finish his story without interruptions and that it was only fair for him to let me finish mine that way too. He quickly apologized, being caught out on his bullshit. I told him the rest of my story and let him realize that he really wasn't the only one who had gone through stuff in his childhood. He then began begging me for another chance at being my friend. I declined and decided to talk with Sally instead, ignoring the rest of his messages. Every day until that point, and even for a while after, was just me feeling like I was going to die. I actually contemplated unaliving myself for a while because I couldn't deal with his constant presence. That's not a reason. Don't do that. I was afraid to leave my house because I felt like he would be there. I know this is a bit weird, but I felt that way because of the schizophrenia. Episodes began getting more frequent and severe. There were periods of time where I could not concentrate in class and actually couldn't hear what the teacher was saying because of my auditory hallucinations. I generally felt like shit, and it got so bad that I felt like I didn't want to be here anymore. But after telling him to bugger off, I felt like a giant weight was removed from my chest and that I could breathe my own air again. Not for long though, because he kept trying to come back into my life, despite me refusing to be his friend ever again. I was still there for him, but only in absolute emergencies. By that, I mean that only if he was on the verge of dying. I wish I could say that he left me alone since then and that I never saw him after that, but I can't because I still see him around at school. And unfortunately, he's friends with my friend Brian. So I still have to hang out around him, which sucks. He annoys me purposely to get my attention by calling himself God and other things that suggest he thinks way too highly of himself. Anyways, that's about it for my story. Samuel, please shut up about your godly status for a second and realize the reason people hate you is because you do this shit. Not once, not twice, but always. So pause, think, and stop so that you don't melt any more brains. Edit. I honestly thought this post was archived. So imagine my surprise when a fucking war started in the comments. Yes, we love wars and comments. I love wars and comments. Can I just say that? Okay. The only reason I mentioned I even had schizophrenia was to explain that while the situation may seem minor to others, it was huge to me. I officially cut contact with Samuel a few years ago now, after he knew where I lived without me telling him. For some time, I was talking to him again because we had a mutual friend, and he took this as an invitation to come back into my life. During that time, I was convinced he was watching me through my window while I was in my room. I asked my mom if I could get proper curtains, etc. He definitely wasn't. I'm sure he isn't that fucking creepy, but I still change in the bathroom out of habit since my bathroom has no windows. The fact that made me simply stating my mental condition in relation to what I was talking about and how it changed my perception, and that was the thing people talked about. I'm sorry for being honest, I guess. This is why faking this shit is harmful, because when people get accused of faking when they aren't. I never thought this would happen to me, so this was an out-of-body experience, honestly. But here I am. I'm currently trying to stop my medication because I'm tired of the side effects and how it has changed my body. I don't think it's worth it. I decided to go off it for several months unsupervised, and my mom forced me back on them. So now I have discussed this with her, and I am on a lower dose. I don't think I'm fucking special for having a problem. It's a massive inconvenience and has almost cost me my life several times. I don't want to hear about how this is what my generation is. Fuck off with your bullshit. Just because a bunch of people out there pretend to have certain problems doesn't mean that this is how everyone is. I've been told that everyone my age goes through this, that this is just a phase, that I'm just looking for attention, whatever. I don't fucking make this my personality. It's just a part of me. It runs in my family. Deal with it. Sorry, I'm not going to pretend that I don't have a mental condition because some people said I don't. Go take your bullshit somewhere else. And don't bring politics into it. They literally do not fucking matter in this situation. I got stalked by a classmate, and that's what the story is about. Now, kindly fuck off if you're gonna talk about how I can't possibly be diagnosed. It's bad if you see self-diagnosed, but then I can't possibly be diagnosed by a professional. Fuck you. I don't know how old you are now or how old you were when you wrote this, though you are obviously under the age of 18. I absolutely cannot stand this generation of I have this, this, that, and this when it comes to mental illness and other disorders. Like, holy shit, it's not cute or cool to make up having different illnesses, but that's exactly the trend in these younger generations. You don't have schizophrenia. You weren't diagnosed by an actual licensed medical professional with schizophrenia, because that is not a diagnosis that comes lightly, and it's not a diagnosis that they give to teenagers. You can't be diagnosed with that until you're in adulthood. I'm so glad my generation wasn't like this one. This kind of weird ass shit didn't occur 10 plus years ago, where kids thought it was cool to have 15 different mental illnesses. What? Do you have training in psychology? That's a rhetorical question. You clearly do not. You're wrong. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I know for a fact that minors can be diagnosed with schizophrenia as well as schizoaffective disorder. In fact, many schizophrenics first begin showing symptoms in adolescence and young adulthood. Schizo disorders affect individuals of all ages. It's a common misconception among older, uneducated folks that certain disorders have this oddly specific criteria to be diagnosed. that young people cannot experience mental illness or be diagnosed with a serious mental illness while being a minor. That is so fucking false. It's almost funny, but your ignorance level is actually worrying. You clearly have never opened a DSM, let alone likely even know what that stands for. Take your blatantly incorrect bullshit somewhere else and stop harassing literal victims. You do not sound like a good person at all. What about this made you comment not any condolences, but a critique of their mental health? You don't live in their head. You're not their doctor. And you clearly do not know anything about psychology to be making claims about it. Go be old somewhere else, preferably Facebook, where your generation belong. Nobody wants to be mentally ill, excluding a very small minority of weird people. Nobody, excluding this minority group, thinks mental illness is cool or trendy, and nowhere did OP state that they have 15 different mental illnesses. You stated that, God, you're a hateful freak. Get help with your obvious hatred of people younger than you. It's probably a symptom of being in a body that ages with a mind that is still infantile. I suggest you get that checked out. Not a mental illness, just a massive character flaw. Do you think I'm faking being bipolar because I'm young? That I faked my psych ward stays because being mentally ill is cool to the younger crowds? You're so ignorant. Why do you think I'm as popular because I had a psychotic break this summer? People like you are the reason that this world is going to shit. If God is real, you're certainly never meeting him. As a person about to finish her bachelor's in psychology, I wholeheartedly agree with everything except the part where you said that no one thinks mental illness is cool or cute. Actually, some people do. A lot of them are on social media. They're even in videos with hypnotism that promise to give you OCD, bipolar, etc. But the people who do that are of all ages. Assuming that someone is faking mental illness just because they are young, straight up ridiculous, and is actually making someone part of the problems that plenty of teenagers face with no one by their side. The person who made these assumptions was extremely judgmental and unnecessarily cruel. They don't even know the OP. Like, what the hell? With the Liberal Party, they lost me even more. Haha, oh little girl, I'm not going to read your nonsensical liberal bullshit. And I do actually have any training in psychology. I have a bachelor degree in biology and neuroscience from one of the top public Ivy universities in the United States, UNCCH, and I'm a medical student there now. I'm 28, so hardly older and definitely far from uneducated. I'm pretty sure that you're only in your teen years by the way you speak and because you're a foolish liberal like all liberals. Signs of schizophrenia can start in early years, but a lot of symptoms are very similar to other mental health disorders, and unless you see highly trained specialists, the odds of being diagnosed as a child are very slim. Why? Because only 0.05% of the schizophrenic population is under 18. Keep on living in your weird little bubble, though. The author responds. UNCCH isn't an Ivy, lol. What? It's just not. Like, not once has that school ever been described as Ivy League. Maybe a little Ivy, but I just searched the internet and couldn't even find that claimed anywhere. After I read that, I was assured of your absolute idiocy and stopped bothering to make sense of your senseless hatred. Biology and neuroscience are not psychology. That's like saying you have a degree in sociology, so you're trained in psychology. They may be related, but they are not remotely the same. You should know that. If you were trained in psychology, the phrase correlation does not equal causation would be drilled into your astronomically thick skull. You are so delusional. Go to therapy, old lady. If I'm a little girl, you're an ancient race. You're an ancient raisin. What? Because being old, ignorant, and hateful. Wow, what a combo. And what makes you think you're qualified to tell an internet stranger that they don't fall into that 0.5%? As a scientist, you should know that you cannot make accurate judgments, diagnosis on statistics alone. Have you ever asked her basic intake exam questions? No, because you're not qualified to, and because you're not her doctor. Also, you should try to stop making snap judgments about people's intellects based on their political beliefs. That is legit the hallmark of ignorance. I'm not judging you for being a conservative. Also, I'm not a liberal. I'm an independent, only 6 years younger than you. I am neither a little girl or a liberal. If you can't get those basic facts right from obviously stalking my profile, I certainly wouldn't trust that you're capable of making accurate diagnoses. Good riddance, you are blocked. Oh my goodness. It keeps going. This person is a moron or a liar. I can't tell which. I'm a special education teacher, and one of my old students was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 6th grade. Children most certainly can be diagnosed with it. They just call it early onset. I really don't need to think about how I'm apparently faking it. I get that enough from my family. How am I supposed to prove this? Show you my medication? Take you for a trip through my brain? I was simply pointing out how my condition made me perceive the situation. I am studying psychology now at 17, and I have a much better understanding of myself and my condition. What else do you want me to tell you? The times I almost died because I thought I could fly, the several breakdowns because I thought someone was poisoning my food, the countless times I believed I was going to die. Have you ever thought about how your lack of acceptance is the reason people are scared to talk about their conditions? I don't know if I have anything else. I highly doubt I do. I never got checked for anything else. I just coincidentally had a breakdown in school one day, and my mom took me to therapy like a good fucking parent. With all due respect, fuck you. Very mixed reviews. Um, I will try to leave the link to this in the description box so you could go, you know, look at it for yourself. Let me know what you guys thought. If you're still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions for anything, please leave them for me. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet. And until next time, stay safe out there.